For today's video, we are going to make this audio visualizer animation. We're going to use Expo blank TypeScript project and React Native Reanimated. To give you some context, it came from one of my previous projects where I have to animate this component from the design based on audio input from the user. It's a broadcast feature, so there is only one speaker, and I use Agora. Agora itself provides volume variable. It's an integer, so somehow I have to animate this component based on the volume integer. So first, let's start from creating the bar component. Here is the project. As you can see, it's a fresh start from Expo template. I only added React Native Reanimated package. That is all. Also, I already installed the application. I just need to start the server. Let's open the application. Okay, let's start with the container. So you want to make the bars spread across the screen. So let's do space between. And let's create the bar. We can use view with a self-closing tag. Style from styles.bar. The width maybe 8, also the height maybe 100. Background color, let's give it red and make it round. Border radius full rounded. Save. It's there. We haven't set the flex direction to row. Okay, let's give it some paddings. Padding horizontal 24. Yep. Now let's try the easy thing, which is animate this single component. Basically, we just need a shared value from React Native Reanimated. So let's say bar height, use shared value 100, the maximum height of the bar, and the bar style, which is use animated style. It returns the height of the bar since we want to animate it. Height is using bar height dot value, and we pass it in the bar style. Bar style. So let's change the value. We can use set interval for this. Let's start by creating a use effect, set interval, maybe 1 second, and the bar height value is gonna change by using with timing to some random numbers. So I'm gonna use math.random and multiply it by 100. Maybe we want to lower it. That's it. And don't forget to clear the interval. This is the cleanup function. Let's call it bar height trigger. So let's clear the interval bar height trigger. It doesn't work. Why? Because we are using the ordinary view component where we should be using animated view. It's safe. There we go. So for the lowest volume, which is 0, we want it to be a dot. For that, We just need to add the minimum height. I'm gonna use 8 to make it circle, since the width is also 8. Maybe outside the floor. Okay, now it's working. We just need to add 15 more bars. We're going to create the bars or the bar heights from array length of 16 and let's map this bar component by calling bar heights dot map. Since the bar now is empty, we're gonna use the index instead. Don't forget a key, so it should be a string. It's safe. There we go. Now we have to animate the bar individually rather than as a group. So we need to provide individual user value, and we can do that by doing map and supplying the use shared value 100. And now we want to change the value individually. We can use bar heights. Let's do bar heights dot for each height, maybe. Let's do height dot value. I'm gonna copy this. And now we are going to use the value here. We cannot use the bar style since the bar style is inside the app component. So let's move the bar into another component. Let's call it bar, which return this component. We don't need the key anymore. And the bar style, we can this one. And for the bar height is coming from the props. Bar height. Type is shared value number. Now we can replace it with the bar component and provide the bar height coming from this map. That's it. It's safe. Should have a queue. This is likely a bug in React. We just need to refresh. Now we can delete this one. We do not need the bar height value anymore, since we have the bar height. Since we only have one input, which is the volume variable, an integer, we have to think how to process that variable into this 16 bars animation. I take an anchor bar. So this bar is actually affects another bar. I'm gonna give this bar the highest height amongst the other bars, and the other bars will scale down based on the distance from the anchor bar. We can define the anchor bar by randomly chose from the 16 bars. We can use again the math random. Since math random produces number from 0 to 1, we can just multiply it by 16 and floor the number to nearest number. Here is the anchor bar. Now I want to know the distance from the anchor bar. So let's do distance. Since distance is not a negative number, we use absolute number. it's gonna be the index from a bar, subtract by bar anchor index. So here's the distance. And now you want to scale the bar height based on the distance. This calculation is just random. You can find a more sophisticated algorithm here. I'm using 1 divided by the distance. But as you can see, there is a missing bar, which I should have done it inside the math.floor. Maybe I need to refresh it. Because the anchor bar itself, the distance is 0. And I should have done that. So let's create a scale variable here. If the distance is 0, which is the anchor itself, I'm gonna give it 1.2 of the maximum height, which is 100. And other than that, it scales down to 1 divided by distance. Now we can replace this with scale. Yep, here we go. How do we make this more realistic? You can play with the animation config called duration. Maybe we can do 400 while the value is changing for every 350 milliseconds. An animated audio visualizer component. We can make this more dramatic. Just play around with the calculation. For example, change it to 2, make it bigger. Now, where do we put the volume variable here? Since we do it manually, so what I'm gonna do is to provide the volume variable. We're not gonna use the real Agora, so I'm just gonna create a use state for this. Volume set use state a number. The audio input from the Agora read the changes in milliseconds. Using use state will be cumbersome for performance, so I'm gonna use shared value instead. Remove this to just volume. I'm gonna extract the bars component outside the app component. Function bars, we can use fragments. Okay, to bars component. Now we can use bars inside the app component. Now bars is going to receive prop from the parent component, which is volume. Volume is also shared value of number. We provide volume from volume.value. Oops, maybe just volume. You want to change the volume using the same interval. Volume.value with timing. Math.random. Oh, we use math.floor again. Here the tricky part, since we cannot change. So here's the tricky part. Since the duration is constant and audio input is actually random, the output is not gonna be realistic. But once you change the volume to the real audio volume, it's gonna do the animation really nice. So here we are going to use the same 400 duration. We do not need the bar heights again. Let's change the interval name to volume interval. Now let's use the volume into our calculation. I'm just gonna say volume.value. I'm gonna divide it by to set the maximum to be 100. Hit save. Now let's restart the application. There's a typo here, it should be 400. Since user value won't trigger re-render, that is the reason why I keep the interval here, just to make sure that the volume is updated. But you can change to use state if you want a real-time update, but for my case it is enough. Every check on 350 milliseconds is enough to indicate if a person start talking or stop talking. This is how I tackle this challenge to animate audio visualizer component from my designer, but the input is only an integer or a number.